This episode is made possible by the generous support of my patrons at patreon.com/SayGoodnightKev and by viewers like you. Thanks! So, I'm not an economics professor, just in case you may have thought that I was an economics professor. I'm not, but I do have common sense, which has become somewhat of a rare commodity, huh? That joke's actually gonna make more sense at the end of this episode. The economy can be somewhat of a complicated issue. It can sometimes get jumbled up in the midst of other issues as well, like religion or politics or animal rights. Probably. And sometimes I hear people making statements about the economy that on the surface seem like a pretty good idea. Oh yeah, that sounds great to me. But if you take them to their logical conclusion, the statements start to kind of fall apart. After hearing a lot of these statements, I realized that maybe the common sense about the economy isn't so common after all. So I thought, let's at least have the Say Goodnight Kevin fan base educated on the basics of economics. And if you're homeschooled, you could just count this as school, so win-win. Aw, spill water on my shirt. Kevin's Economic Trilogy, Part 1, Supply and Demand. Now, this is the basic principle that fuels all economic movement. People are always gonna need and want something. That's human nature, that's the way things work. Like food, or a place to live, or, I don't know, like a yo-yo ball, maybe? When you were a kid, you might have wanted a yo-yo ball. And there will always be people who are willing to step up and fill that void, for the right price, of course. Which is where the concept of worth comes in. That's economic worth, which is how much a good or service costs in order to turn it from not being yours to being yours through a mutual agreement. Now, this is determined by two things. One, how rare it is, and two, how desirable it is. Notice whenever I was talking about the explanation of worth, I mentioned the mutual agreement. This is because with every transaction within a working economy, there are two parties involved who agree to the terms of the transaction. Otherwise, it's just theft. Those two parties happen to be the buyer and the seller. When you go to Walmart and you buy something, you, the buyer, have agreed that the price that Walmart says it is the price that you are willing to pay for it. Walmart has agreed that that price that you are willing to pay for it is how much they're willing to accept in order to make it not theirs anymore. This also works the same way with services. But as we know, in our economy, we see worth change. So let's look at it this way. Have you ever heard the term, it's a dime a dozen? Hopefully you have. That is an idiom that we use to say, oh, that is really cheap. The idea is that it is so cheap that you could buy 12 of them for 10 cents. I don't know if there's something that is less than a penny. Maybe like, I don't know, Tootsie Rolls or something? I do like Tootsie Rolls though. Basically, it means that the item isn't very expensive because it isn't either very rare or it isn't very desirable, or both. It's kind of like, remember that Goof Troop episode? Do you remember Goof Troop at all? No? Okay, well, fine, I'm old. When I was young, there was a show called Goof Troop. There was this one episode where Max and all of his friends, they all have this one baseball card of Lefty. And Lefty isn't that great of a baseball player. Okay, so the kind of bully at school is buying up all the Lefty cards. And everybody's talking about this. Like, why is he buying up all the Lefty cards? Everybody's got a Lefty card. They find out whenever it's too late that he's bought everybody's Lefty cards and he is going to actually destroy all of the Lefty cards except for one. And that way he will have the rarest baseball card in the entire school. There is one flaw in his plan. Just because it is rare doesn't necessarily mean that someone is going to desire that card. So how do you get somebody to desire a product? Well, isn't that the question of the universe? You can't control people's desires. Which brings me to the role that the seller plays in this whole transaction situation. Basically, the seller can set their price as high or as low as they want. Oh, well, isn't that convenient for people who sell things? I guess then they could just set the price as high as they want and become super duper rich and just charge a $1,000,000. Well, that's not exactly true, because if they raise the price too high, then buyers are going to either go buy it somewhere else, buy an alternative service or product, or decide that maybe it wasn't that important to them in the first place. But if a price is too low, then a seller may not be able to keep up with demand or to cover the cost it takes to produce the product or service in the first place. You know, it only costs Apple like 3 cents to build an iPhone. They should just be giving those things away for free. Ah, great point there, Rude Kevin. Though I don't know if it's actually only 3 cents. This is why worth isn't based on the raw materials involved in making the product, but by the desire of the customer themselves. At the moment of release, the iPhone, whichever version, is worth a lot of money. That's because it's new and rare and desirable and cool and sleek. These are some of the examples that people who are in line to buy the new iPhone will give you. And are they wrong? Absolutely not, because they are the ones who are determining the value. But Kevin, I can't afford an iPhone 6. Yes, but I bet you could go online right now and buy an iPhone 3. What? I don't want an iPhone 3. Why not? You could buy those like anywhere. So you're saying that something that is common is worth less. The iPhone 3, which less than 5 years ago was being sold for $400 to $600, is now so quickly next to worthless. They sold it though for that amount at that time because people were willing to buy it. Then when the worth dropped, the price dropped and it became more accessible to other people. And then Apple created a new iPhone. They did this because they could, because if people weren't willing to spend the $400 to $600 on it, they just wouldn't make it. Which means you, the customer, have a tremendous amount of power when it comes to what makes or breaks a business. But let's not forget that with great power comes great responsibility. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. You know, I want to give a big shout out to legacyandwealth.com. And if you like this economic stuff, actually legacyandwealth.com is a place you should check out because they have a lot of economic advice and entrepreneurial advice and things of that nature. Really, seriously, check them out. And also Brendan Neely gives to this show, and I'm really grateful, at patreon.com/saygoodnightkev. Check that out if you want to, and that's about all I gotta say, I guess. But Kevin, you didn't say goodnight.